Yes, we have.
I think I've been here a little longer than you, but
A couple days.
a couple days. I remember the town the way it used to be. I'm sure you do. And I've seen a lot of changes. And some of them are good. And I often think that if my parents ever happened to come back, they would not know where they were because the town has changed so much.
I totally agree with you, Elsie. I feel the same way.
Lots of things have disappeared, but other things have taken their place. I remember going to school as a little kid. There were like 5,000 people in the town, and everybody knew everybody, and everybody had a kid in every. The families were big, so there was a kid in every class. So you knew everybody. You knew all the families. Did you find that so?
Exactly right, Elsie. I remember my mother, as a little girl, lived on Derby Avenue and told me how they frequently went swimming in the Naugatuck River and how clean it was and how good it was. I remember later, growing up and with my sisters and everything, get in a car, go to Waterbury. We had to go through Naugatuck, and the river would be yellow one time, or purple the next, and green the next. Never blue. And if they could come back today and see what that river looks now, with the improvements that have been made, and the fish ladder, you're absolutely correct. They would not even recognize the tongue.
You know, you and I, and maybe everyone will be gone, but I think there's going to come a day when that river is going to be like a summer resort. They will have picnic areas and boating, and I think it's going to be a real asset. We're really lucky in Seymour anyway, because this great Naugatuck River goes right through our town. And this is one of the reasons why so many industries came here, because the water was plentiful. And it made the town grow great. And I remember when I was a little kid, I lived way up on North Main Street. It was you were called a hick then. And the people that lived in town were more elite. Now it's reversed. Now the hicks have become, now you move to the suburbs and you're elite, and the people in town are different. So I would have to take the trolley to school, and because I lived so far, the town would give us car tickets, and my whole neighborhood would take the trolley to school. He would dump us off at Rogel's, and then we would have to walk over that covered bridge. I would be petrified because the boys used to tease the daylights out of the girls. The fence, the bridge was rickety, and the fence was rickety, and the boys would tease the girl, and by shaking the fence, or sometimes they'd show off and sit on the fence, and I would hug that side of the bridge, and I couldn't wait to get over, because I was scared to death that they were going to throw me in the river. And I went to school that started at Annex.
I did also.
And I think that only went as far as 3rd grade. I can't remember rightly.
By the time I went to Center for the lower grades, and then over to the Annex building for like 6th, 7th, and 8th. There was no middle school. I believe I was in a class, one of the first classes to have a lunchroom, which was pretty exciting at that time. I got, this is, I was born in '41. I'm not, and I'm the baby of this crew, I guess. And but still, I think I was pretty impressed with getting a hot lunch. I'll never forget that. And for me, one of the most interesting things was, it was a Cold War time, and we would have to go out in the hall, and they'd sound an alarm, and we'd have to go out in the hall, and we'd all get against the wall and pull our coats over our head. I guess that was supposed to save us from a bomb. I never had much faith in it, but fortunately we didn't need it, and we're still here. That's
And everybody, all the town finally landed up in 8th grade at Maple Street School. All the 8th graders would go, but you would go to 8th grade at Maple Street School. And that's where you would graduate from. And then we'd go down to the Congregational Church, and every single class took a picture on the steps of the Congregational Church. And then you had a little picnic on the school grounds. That would be your graduation festivity. And at that time, none of the teachers were married, and there were no men teachers. If you were married, you had to leave. And then the war changed everything. So a lot of good teachers had to leave because they wanted to get married. So most of the teachers were spinsters.
So tell me some more about what school was like when you were younger. Elsie, you said you went to Annex, you went to Center, then 8th grade at Maple Street,
Yes.
right? And met up. But Frank, that wasn't how it was for you.
No, I went from Center and Annex. But then I left Seymour for high school. I still lived here, but I took vocational agriculture at Woodbury High School because I wanted to be a farmer.
Okay. How about you, Elsie? What was high school like for you?
Well, we went down to the community center, and this was wonderful now. You know, we were stepping up into the world. But when we got there, we were lowly freshmen and looked up to the juniors and the seniors. And but everybody was mixed. The classes were all mixed. And I had a wonderful, wonderful teacher that I think she changed my life somehow, and that was Anna Lopresti. She had a wonderful way of making you see two sides of a story, so that when you went in there to talk to her and you were opinionated, you came out with another thought. And I always admired her for that, and I still use that and think of that whenever whenever people talk and I have to make a decision which way it's going. And then she became our First Lady Mayor. And like I said before, when I would go into school and I got off the trolley at Rogel's, I would have to walk over Bank Street, and that was full of stores. And my favorite store was Behuniak's because they had penny candy, and you could buy, the candy that came on the paper strip with all the dots on it. Well, I would buy that because that was the most you could get for a penny. And of course, I would have done anything for candy. I would be late, and the teacher would say to me, "Elsie, you're late." I know, I had a problem. "Oh no, I heard you stopped at Behuniak's for candy." So the teachers were they knew the students, like teachers know them today too. And as you walked over the bridge, and underneath the bridge there was, you remember Shermer's?
Yeah.
Shermer's had a shoe store under there, and there was a Chinese laundry under there. And when they were going to build that bridge, Shermer would not consent to the price that they wanted to give him. So what did they do? They went right over him and left him under there. So, and eventually he went out went out of business. And then that part of First Street that the flood took away and Second Street was loaded. Every single piece of land had a house on it. And most of the immigrants lived there. And they were Polish, Russian, you name it. They all lived together. There were taverns there, a hotel, a bakery. It was just a neighborhood all in itself. And the flood redeveloped the whole town. And you don't remember that much about downtown Seymour?
Not as far back as you, but I sure remember the flood. I watched it along with the rest of my family down here on Falls Hill. My dad was a deacon in the Congregational Church, and I was a 14-year-old strong little boy, so sent me down there right away. We would everybody got a tetanus shot, and my dad sent me down there with a wheelbarrow and a shovel, and we shoveled all the mud out of the basement in the Congregational Church and the room with the stage downstairs and the kitchen that was in there. And the mud had to be 4 foot thick. There were 2 doors that came out towards the old high school, the community center. And we had 2x12s there, and you just pushed the wheelbarrows full of mud up and dump them in the pickup trucks, and the adults would take the mud away. That's how I cleaned out the church. I think I was happy to have high school start that year. Yeah.
Now you said that what is the community center now was the high school. The flood comes. What happened? Obviously, that destroyed the high school. So what did you do after that for school? And
They immediately went to double sessions in center school.
Okay.
The high school went to center school for double sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And then they doubled up Maple Street. But also Bungay School was just opening. They were making plans anyway. Bungay School had just opened, so that was there. Now, I went to high school in Woodbury, but my sisters went on double sessions. The seniors would go to school like 7 to 11 or something, and then the lower classes would, the juniors and seniors first, and then the lower ones, the poor freshmen on the bottom had to, they wouldn't get home till later, 5 o'clock or something. Whatever the hours were, I don't know. Because I was going to Fritz's in Oxford on my bicycle, and George Kuss's wife would pick me up in a station wagon. I was the only one from Seymour, and she'd pick up a couple of boys in Oxford and 2 or 3 more in Southbury. And by the time we got to Woodbury, we had eight people in a station wagon, and go to school for the day. And at home, they'd drop me off at Fritz's again.
Wow.
I lived on North Main Street. The house is not there yet, but we had floods every single spring. And we were close to the river was far back, but we never got water in the house. Always the cellar was full. And my father would make wine, and my mother would can her stuff. And when that flood came, they would both be devastated, because here the barrels are all floating around, and all that has gone to waste. But that 55 flood, that mud was liquid mud, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And our cellar filled, but not the house, because there was a big stretch of land in back of our house to the river, so that let the river kind of had room to spread out. But further up in Beacon Falls, where the trailer park was, all those people just, you know, they were right on the bank of the river, so they went, and you would see the trailers going down the road, floating down Route 8. And then everybody said, I'm getting out of here, I'm not leaving, I'm leaving this place. Well, what do you think? They all came back. Everybody comes back to their home. And of course that redeveloped the town, took away First Street, Second Street, and the bridge.
Yep.
The bridge down by the
That you
middle
walked
school.
over.
Yep.
I think it, the Humphrey Bridge, that's called the Humphrey Bridge down by the,
There were many businesses there too. The
tons.
Dutch Door Inn was there.
Yeah,
There was a Buick dealership there.
that's right.
There was Tommy Thomas had his little hot dog stand.
Did you
over in the
remember him?
corner. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
He had the best hot dogs, right? Him and his wife.
Right. The Ward Funeral Parlor was
Stuck in the corner.
Was right there on the corner, and the library was completely gone,
Yeah.
completely obliterated. There was nothing left but the giant rock that was in front of it.
Where was the library located? As compared to businesses nowadays.
I would say
Right, right across from that little park.
right.
Oh.
Yeah,
Right,
but
right.
I would say it's about, where the pink car sits right now. In my memory, that's about where I remember. The pink car that's in the driveway over, it was right about in that corner. And Ward's funeral home was where they made that little like parking lot where you have the farmer's market and some people park in that little turnaround there. That's where Ward's was. And that was a huge funeral parlor. And that was Upson Ward in 55.
So the Congregational Church then the building itself stayed. It didn't. So
There's a
okay.
mark by the front doors of the high water mark,
Oh, okay.
and it's you go up those steps to the doors, and it's probably 6.5 feet high. That's how high it was in the church itself.
And so the library was right near there,
Yep.
and then the funeral home, and they did not make it.
No, none of that
Okay.
stuff made it. The cemetery on Derby Avenue, Union Cemetery, got terribly ripped up. Coffins floated away. I don't think some of them were ever recovered or buried in the right place.
Yeah.
It was a horrible mess. Worst thing I ever saw in my life.
And now that they started on building the Chappaqua Dam, right?
Yep.
And to prevent that kind of a thing from happening, and hopefully it does the trick, And but every spring we'd have a thaw, and we'd have floods, and we just have to deal with it. And that's funny because after the flood, after the water receded, I was married then, and my husband was walking in back of the where the river runs with that big space that I told you, and he found more money stuck on the little branches, $1 here, $5 there, and because it got washed and got stuck on the branches. And I remember not being able to leave town because the National Guard was here. And at that time I worked at Yale, and I had to get out, and I had to prove to them where I was going and why I was going, because they didn't want anyone coming in or out that didn't belong here. And I hear about this looting today. We didn't have none of that, did we, Frank?
No.
There was no looting at all, and everybody felt sorry for everybody else.
So neighbor taking care of
Right.
neighbor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was mostly the lower part, like up around Pearl Street and Grand Street. Those people, they didn't feel this. It was only the the lower part of the valley that felt the brunt of the flood.
I felt that everybody pretty much came together. The community
did.
really responded well. Town of Seymour put up a number of, we just call them flood houses, but you know, the size of a trailer in a trailer park or something. There were, I think,
Quonset huts.
right. I don't know if there's any left now at all.
Yeah.
There was one right by Whittemore until just a couple of years
Yeah.
ago. But there were a half a dozen of them there. Over on Pearl Street, there was a whole bunch of them around the corner, across from McCusker's grocery store. Every neighborhood had a grocery store, and you know, a little convenience store. But
What
Oh.
happened to the businesses on the other side of the river, by that bridge you were talking about that you had to cross to get to Center School?
They went down.
Okay, that's where Seymour Manufacturing was.
Oh,
and
Seymour
those,
Manufacturing.
What happened to those?
Those businesses kind of stayed, like Behuniak's, and of course they changed owners and things. But they stayed. The Seymour Furniture, Eckhart's. They stayed, and I think maybe the water went down First Street and Second Street, and washed that away, and but the businesses stayed there. But the businesses down by the Humphrey Bridge, that
right,
the Dutch store,
yeah,
and
around
Mr.
around the
McKinnon had
corner,
a
even
wonderful
around the corner,
store there,
right.
and there was stores all along
Yeah,
there.
even around the corner, Foley's
And-
drugstore was
and,
there.
yeah,
And
Mr.
they moved to Bank Street.
That's right.
The shoemaker, Mr. Bashir, was there. Moved over to Bank Street. Their places got wiped out on Lower Main Street, across from King's Grill, or what's it called today?
And Mr. Mr. Smith, the druggist, no, Foley, it was Foley. He decided that he moved down to the end of Bank Street, and he made a big window in the back so that when he worked, he could overlook and see the river. And it was the river that took him away.
Yep.
And
How ironic.
because he thought that it must have been a good spot to overlook the river, you know, when it wasn't boiling like it was during the flood. And I'm also thinking about when I was going to school at Center, across the street there was all stores. The Claridis brothers,
Yep.
one Claridis had a grocery store, and another Claridis brother had like confectionaries, and they did business there, and there was many businesses along there, and that whole, from the Seymour lumber all the way up, was nothing but apartment houses, and people, immigrants came, and it was the first place that they would be able to find a decent rent, and they could walk to work at the Seymour Manufacturing, the Novelty, the Swan Shop. The town was full of factories. And every immigrant got its start there in those little apartments. And of course, eventually they're going to be coming down now. And again, the town is going to change its look. Already the Novelty Shop has, all the weeds have grown and everything.
Yep.
And that has changed.
Yep. The lumber
And,
company's
so
gone. All that stuff is
The
gone.
Claridis, Gus Claridis was the one that had the grocery store. He decided to make a store further up, and he built a store further up on Bank Street, which I think is the gym now. And that was so popular, and his customers were so faithful. And you know, they were the ones that started that Sunday shopping. Because they were mom and pop stores, they were allowed to stay open on a Sunday morning. And so then pretty soon everybody else started. And then they pushed the envelope a little bit further, and eventually all the stores stayed open on a Sunday. And they were the original ones
They started it.
to start it, the Claritas. Of course, they bought that whole plaza, that was mostly Swans, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. When they bought it, it was Chatfield Lumber. Chatfield Lumber had just built a place on New Haven Road. The Chatfields were a grand old family in this
Yes,
town.
yeah.
But I always loved the Clartises myself. It was still there when I went to center school.
Yeah.
And that the one they built across from the Swan House, that later became Richland when they built
Yes,
that big.
exactly,
Right.
exactly.
And that building is actually gone today.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
What's the the physical fitness center anyway.
Yeah.
That's look at me, I know nothing about physical fitness. So. That's the new Claire's Shopping Center, but it's been amazing to watch it grow. And as you said in the very beginning, if our parents could come back, they'd think
would know where they
I think
were.
they'd think it was still Humphreysville.
And that the Claritas that sold the confectionaries, no, it was the Claritas that sold the groceries. I had a nickel. Now you could buy an awful lot for a nickel. Sosinski's Bakery was right there, and you get 3 donuts for a nickel. And this one day, I think I went over to the Claritases, and I'm looking around, and so that Mr. Claritas says to me, "Why don't you buy these ginger snaps? They'll make your hair curly." There was nothing I wanted more than curly hair. I hate ginger snaps. And I spent my nickel on the ginger snaps, and I kept waiting for the curly hair, and it never came. So, but the Clartises were very, very generous to the town, and nobody knew what they did, and they didn't want anybody to know what they did. And Peter, in his last years, would buy the rings for all the high school kids that won the state champion that year. And he would be at all the games. He was always at all the softball games for the girls, the Wildcats. And he attended every game. Of course, there's nothing like the Seymour Wildcats. My granddaughter played for them, and when they went to another town, they would say, "Oh, here comes Seymour." Them girls been playing. They started playing in the womb because Bob Lane would start these kids. They could hardly reach the T-ball, and thanks to Bob Lane is why Seymour has such a wonderful ladies softball team.